Okay, so you read the title of the video. Every time you see a oneness, you have to run away. Why? Because that's a cult that creates a value for a few people in exchange and in expense of the suffering of the rest. In this video, I'm going to expand on that, so bear with me and be patient. All right, so if you go back about 2,500 years ago, about the time that Jews started writing the Old Testament during the Babylonian era and the Persian era, we know now that most of the Old Testament was written around 200 to 300 BC. In that time frame, you are in the marketplace of contemporary religions that are competing with you. So in order to be able to gain followers and adherents, what you have to do is that you have to come with something better that it cannot be topped. And the way to do that is essentially to take it to extreme. By the way, it's the same pattern today that we see that it continues on. And this is why religious Abrahamic beliefs are so destructively dangerous. And side note, especially in time that we have nuclear weapons in this world, we cannot afford to play around with these foolish ideas. So they come up with the idea of the supreme God that simply is most powerful and cannot be topped off, and he's going to grant the followers of him the version of immigration where essentially you would gain the ticket to citizenship of the heaven program. So through this program, you would be able to have the all the goodies is available in heaven, and you would be given the eternal life and gift of happiness forever. And the way to do that is to believe. This is very critical. So your actions are necessarily not the ones that determine if you are entitled to this. Hypothetically speaking, let's say there is an afterlife. They're saying that the way to do this is to just allege yourself. Believe. That's all you have to do. And I want to open a side note here for those who still have this notion in their mind. Let's just assume for a moment that there was an afterlife. We're just going to say that it does exist. And maybe you're right, by the way. Do you honestly believe that just simply believing in God of Abraham, or in a modern age, in pathway and rite of passage through Muhammad or through Jesus, do you think that this is the way to do it, or your actions are what determine it? If you're on this planet, do you think that God of heaven is going to grant you, the person who is so selfish and in search of self-preservation, do you think that God is going to grant you the rite of passage to heaven? Maybe he has set about some kind of quiz for you guys to see that how much selfish you are. Are you really for injustice that's happening? Are you able to pass your exam and your quiz to show that you are truly in a global sense against any kind of injustice, or your vision of injustice is something that essentially contradicts your self-preservation? Because if that's what you're thinking, obviously you're not doing it correctly. I will close this side note here. But moving on, in the Abrahamic belief, the way to do it is not to be a good citizen, not to stand up against injustice, but is to just simply allege yourself. In fact, later on in the phase of Christianity, we come up with the word pagan, which comes up with the Latin word for paganos, which essentially means villagers, countryside men. Why? Because the Christians believe that because these people are dispersed throughout the countryside, it's so hard to reach them and try to essentially preach them the message, and it would take them a long time to try to get them come on board. So it would be just a better investment to just label them as pagans and just right out go on a genocide on them, and just stick to the people living in cities and in urban areas, because they're concentrated. It's easier and quicker to rapidly expand the message and to try to gain followers. And of course, when you commit a genocide, those people who don't believe it and they might oppose to it don't even exist in the first place to want to oppose you. So it's a very brutal thing from the very beginning to come up with. And that's essentially the same idea in the Jewish mindset. You have the Jews and Gentiles. Gentiles, non-believers who don't even, are less than human, and some translation of the word, they're equivalent to cows, and they should not even be regarded as humans. And anything that dirty you want to do to them, you want to enslave them, Yahweh, God of Jews, commands them that, hey, you shall not be a slave of anybody, but, I will give you all kinds of slaves and goodies, and you should be able. And you see the same reflection in Hadith, in Islamic, and also in Quran as well. There are side notes of it where it says that, there's a heavenly world where there are beautiful maidens, and, in Hadith says that there would be 72 virgins available to you. And these are white virgins from the Persian lands and Caucasus lands. So going back to the idea, the dynamics and the strategy of these religions and these cults in order to work is that, number one, through gaining power and political dynamic, they have to lay their hands on values and power and wealth to begin with, so now they can disperse it upon those few people who actually became part of the tribe, and they contributed to the success. And what that means is that essentially and inherently they are totalitarian. They always thrive toward trying to seize the power on top of as much as they can. And what that means is that also equally is that there's a short supply. So the adherents receive the booty and the bounty, the rest, they have to suffer. So these ideologies are inherently on a class basis, that you have to have the poor people who we just don't regard them as humans. Why? Because even though they're good people and they're good citizens, maybe under the statute of law, but because they're not believers, we should just toss them out. They just don't believe in anything. So this is one aspect of it. The second aspect has to do with, the freedom of thought, expression, via speech, and, other means. Essentially, by getting people to only have one belief in one God, you're telling them that, you should not think outside the box. Don't even think about anything else. I mean, this is the most demonic, yet, its sophistication can be appreciated means of human mind control. To try to tell them that, you just, don't think of anything else. To try to get them through this message of, powerful divine, to don't even do that because it's going to punish you. This is the theme that constantly in the stories of Old Testament, you see that people suffer because they simply fail to maintain their belief in Yahweh, God of Abraham. Islam replicates the same ideologies, and so does Christianity. So inherently is against, social and political freedoms. That's another inherent value of the Abrahamic beliefs. You see the same thing in the modern age happening in America. Within the Christian world of, America, in the 1800s specifically, you see a rise of a fewer denomination that try to replicate the same model, creating value within the sphere of the Christian dominant America, a smaller scale. Rise of these denominations that you probably know better than I do: Adventists, Baptists, Methodists, Millerites, Mormons, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, that's saying that, no, not all Christians go to heaven, only the ones who follow my interpretation of Bible, those are the ones go to heaven. Essentially trying to dilute this saturated market and trying to gain followers by replicating the same model on a smaller scale. So hopefully by far you have a grasp of how demonic this belief is And where people like Trump come in, because their idea is that by grasping this one niche of the society, such as, race, ethnic, or sub-religious belief system, for example, such as white people, or demonizing and alienating others, try to get these people to come on board with them. And why it sells? Because as of yet still, the homogeny of the people in America are white, even though these are the same white that, going back about not too long ago, that is even 60 years ago, they were smaller, white people, factions such as Irishes that were not accepted into the white stream, nor the Italians, but later they also became part of it. So once this system rolls back, then it will break off again, as I said, just like these denomination develop. Post-Trump era would be the breakdown of system to try to create value for a smaller phase, and then again we go back to indoctrinating a new view that only the German descendants, the blue eyes, those are the ones who fall into that definition. The rest of you white people don't really belong here. I hope people by now can see the pathway they're walking in. All right, now all said and done, I want to tell you that there are 4 ones that you do need to follow in this world, and I would lay them out for you. 1, to begin with, is you as in one individual. The way that we are created, it is not by coincidence that we are created in entities that are separate with each other, because each of us as a little kingdom preside over our body that we need to a temple we need to pay attention to, and we need to protect and care for and nurse. And that means that we need to care for our health, our mental health, our increasing our knowledge, trying to eat healthy food, and then stand for any injustice that comes towards us. The second one that you have to care for is your spouse, right? So that's a point that essentially, as the smallest group form the cohesive foundation. And through the institution of marriage, you essentially learn the skills to try to build relationship on a greater scale. Now, in a social level, you can have that capacity. The third one has to do with, caring for the society that you live in. And that can be related as, building blocks. Then again, as you extend a family, the town, the city you live in, the county, the state, the country, and next level, the world, the globe that we live in, right? So all of these are tools and breakaways to serve the greater good. That is, a nation under the world. That is, humanity as a general, the religion of humanity, caring for others and standing for injustice. And that is because as much as the idea of everybody, as I said, caring and presiding over their own body sounds great, it's just that we are analog beings, and we're susceptible to natural barriers, and we're not made like each other. I mean, think about it. If we were all made like each other with the same interests, inclinations, and levels of intelligence, we would all just be doing one specific task, and we would be the exact copycat of each other, one another, and nobody would come up with different ideas or belief system, for example, to begin with. So we're not like the same, and the only way that we can resolve this is to complement each other. And the other aspect, why this third one is very important, is because if you don't take the responsibility to coordinate with the rest of the society, you're leaving a door open for some tyrant who claims to knows the pathway and the way to try to bring the society together, to try to take advantage of this position and claim power over you. And the next thing you know, that this person, you have to actually pray to him, that is, beg him to try to, engage in more tyrannical means and, take people's liberties away. And something that, from the Bush era we've been kind of seeing in America, by the way, in my opinion, and essentially take people's liberty away, have more restrictive policies towards everybody else, so that, order is preserved in the society. This is the approach that, essentially you're giving your control over to somebody else. So it's a job of every single person to, under the statute of the democracy, that means, citizens' involvement, come in and be engaged in the welfare of their society. Aside from caring for other humans, another thing we have to do is caring for our fellow cohabitants, other animals in the society and our world, as well as the environment itself. We need to nurse and care for them as well. We've been given the rationality to do this, and we have the duty to do that. The fourth one that we need to care about is to expand our purview and try to have a perspective of out of world, stepping outside mentally of this little rock that we call planet Earth, and try to care and essentially harmonize. To begin with, from our solar system, what I call the father sun, essentially by having this ray of the sun, it has fertilized the earth and has created vegetation, other cohabitants of us, and as well as us humans. So it's very important. And speaking of that, it's very essential that we stop exploiting the planet Earth, because the way that we are causing an imbalance is in a strata and the chemical composition of the Earth by extracting all these resources such as coal and you name it, nitrogen, cobalt, that Mr. Elon Musk and many other people in this new whole industrial phase of utilizing batteries are using, by the way, through the slave of children in mines in Congo or some other African countries. And it's no wonder that somehow he's, as a immigrant, got the approval of Mr. Trump, because the way that we're destroying that relationship that exists, that creates the boundaries and balance between us and a sun, which feeds us, can change the climate and also change the magnetic fields of the earth, which ultimately will cause our own annihilation.